Good afternoon, everyone. This is a short, quick presentation about Erikson and young adults, approximate age 18 to 40, and some nursing perspective and interventions that you need to know. So let's talk about this group. Some of the material that I read says 18 to early 40s. Some of the material says age 20 to early 40s. Remember, this isn't anything that's going to be specific. They're talking about a general range in age. So don't get worked up on the age group, okay? This is a stable period of growth. There's lots of goals that this group has. They're usually working on choosing and establishing their careers, which all of you can vouch to. You're here in school. Fulfilling sexual needs, starting a home and a family, getting a social circle, developing some maturity in their life, and and most people are at their peak performance physically in this time frame, so that's always interesting. So first we'll do cognitive development. Piaget says this is formal operational stage. He says that starts around 11 years old. This is where you're able to do abstract thinking. You can also be objective. You can look at the world in a wide view. You can do lots of problems. You've reached your peak intellectual level. So let's talk a little bit on diet and nutrition. I went along with what your textbook promotes, and they're promoting Healthy People 2030 and the goals that they have there for our country. Their goals for 2030 is to promote health, to decrease chronic disease by eating a healthier diet, to try to maintain appropriate weight, which we already have talked in class about obesity being a problem in this country, and to prevent food insecurity. And we've already talked about that, about social determinants of health. If you can't afford food, you won't buy it. One of the other things in Healthy People is to have calorie requirements based on your age, your size, your activity, and whatever sex you are. Men need more calories than women, and to avoid excessive saturated fats. Well, what are saturated fats? And there's only one way I can kind of explain it to you. I can actually give you the official definition. Saturated fat is a dietary fat made up of carbon chains saturated with hydrogen atoms. They have only single bonds and they're very stiff. So let me give you an example. I don't know. On the holidays, I got a chance now that I have a daughter-in-law to cook Easter breakfast, and so I made homemade Southern biscuits because that's something that I know how to do really well, and I wanted to use real butter, not margarine. Margarine is actually made up of something plastic. I want to use real butter. Well, when you set real butter out, it melts. It's not got any saturated fats, and it breaks down, doesn't it? If you've ever seen real butter and left it out in the morning, it'll be soft by the end of the day. It breaks down very easy. It's actually more healthy for you than a saturated fat. Saturated fats would be things like red meat and cheese that don't break down. Okay, full fat dairy things that they don't break down. Coconut and palm oils, they don't break down that easy. They stay stiff and they stay stiff in your body. And hopefully that explains it to you. It's okay to eat even avocados. They break down, but it's okay to have a little bit of butter because it breaks down. You just don't eat the whole butter stick, which is what we tend to do in this country. We tend to have too much in the portion size. We should talk a little bit about risk for injury. And so let's do that on the next slide. So since I actually put this slideshow together myself, I did not use the one that came with the book. They don't want you to post it and do anything to it, and I thought it would be better if I just got right to the point here. I came up with two things when I made the slide. I have a couple more. The first one is obviously risk for injury is violence or gun violence that I see a lot of young people. You see people dying from that. The other thing would be car accidents, ATV injuries, motorcycle injuries. Some sports-related injuries, they noted in occupational instances at jobs, alcohol-related poisoning. They call it the morbidity rate. HIV, sexually transmitted infections that take out people this age. Mental health problems where people don't realize that they need to to address their mental health problems. So I kind of thought of those after I made this PowerPoint. We've all talked about those issues already because we talked about it for teenagers and for young school agers. So this is a slide that talks about some preventative medicine that we can start to teach people in this age group that they need. This is in the holy grail of list. One thing is to make sure that they get a yearly blood pressure check, a blood sugar check, a blood pressure, blood sugar, and get some labs drawn like cholesterol. Another thing is to promote influenza vaccine, which has been a tricky one for nurses because you know how much negative publicity that the vaccines have gotten. The actual influenza vaccine that we go get in the fall, which you're all going to have to go get here pretty soon, and myself, I have to go get it too. It's just one is it just is not a live vaccine. When I go into Giant Eagle and I say I need an influenza vaccine for my nursing job, and I wait there and I get it, it's not a live vaccine. It takes a few weeks for it to kick in and for it to work. Okay, so I don't take a live vaccine. I don't blame you guys if you don't, but we're just trying to prevent outbreaks of influenza, which we get every year because people are such big buttheads about getting a vaccine. The other thing I came up with was learning to wear your seatbelt when you're riding in a car, putting a helmet on if you do an ATV or a motorcycle. Um, Gun violence. I own a gun. I'm not against guns. I'm a gun owner. I also know though that the violence is kind of not really being addressed. The violence part of it, owning a gun isn't should be more of a hunting kind of a thing, is and protecting yourself as opposed to the violence that we see all the time. And I know you all feel the same about that. The other thing, preventative medicine. I do believe this social determinants of health issue that we talked about in class is kind of serious. I think we need to start addressing if people can't afford what they need, that we need to help them with that, or find out why they can't afford what they can afford and see if we can get them to the right resources. There are other things, you need to start a mammogram. Some women need a mammogram as they get close to 40. We need to have women do a breast self-exam. We'll talk about that in class. I have a demo from the lab I want to show you. And a testicular self-exam, I have a demo in that for you. We want to teach people to prevent things and how to check things. The other thing would be is if you have any kind of a risk for colon cancer, they're saying colon cancer is starting younger. We want people to get a colonoscopy or to do this box thing. And I will talk about that in class with you and a little bit more about that so we can know what that is. And there's some other things that are preventative that we want to talk about. One big thing that we do need to talk about is always lack of exercise, and that is in all age groups. And think about that. Most people, when I talk to them during the day, they complain about being fatigued. I get a lot of people tell me they have headaches or their back hurts. As you get older and your joints, if you've been a waitress or like myself, a nurse, you start to get joint pain, you gain a little weight, the joints can't take it. So I don't really know what the answer is to lack of exercise. I do know that, you got to go slow and do what you can do to try to do exercise. If you were not a long distance runner, you're not going to suddenly be one because the nurse talks to you. But there are other ways you can get out and get exercise: walking a dog, taking a walk in the parks, those kinds of things. You see, when they used to have a mall, we used to have these people called mall walkers, and they would be walking around the mall just to get some exercise. I know I'm near the Lake YMCA, and they have a group of older people who are retired, and I'm not retired, and they go and they walk around the YMCA every day. I'm not sure that that's interesting to me, but it would be a way to get some exercise and get some, to talk to people during the day and have some friends. It's something to think about. So here we are with Erikson. Erikson says this age group deals with intimacy versus isolation. Young adults seek a meaningful relationships while maintaining a sense of self. And the key question, can they form close, committed relationships? It doesn't have to be married. I'm noting in my life and in my own children, marriages have either not happening or it's happening later in life, which I'm okay with that. But that doesn't mean marriage or sex. It means intimate relationships. Can you have close, meaningful relationships with other people? And that is very, very clear in Erikson's writing and his information. One example that I can give you in a personal thing, we had a student several years ago who had been in she was basically an orphan, had been in a home, lived in someone's home most of her life, not in her own parents, and she got out of school early and was going to school, and she didn't know a lot of people here, and she started making friends. So you think about that, she started to make some friendships here in nursing school like we all do, not necessarily romantic relationships, but people that could emotionally support and she could connect with and she would be working with when she started out with her job. So that was a successful resolution. She's found intimacy versus isolation. So this is just a slide is just kind of saying the same thing. Successful resolution. You want to have healthy friendships. You can have romantic relationships, trust and commitment of others, a connection to others, a greater psychological well-being, some type of people that can give you some emotional support if you need it. So what would be the definition of unsuccessful resolution here? The isolation side. Well, it would be someone who's lonely all the time, socially withdrawn. They fear commitment or rejection. They have no close relationships. They are increased risk for emotional distress and possibly even mental health issues or possibly even suicide or something like that. So let's put some nursing application into this, Erikson. You should always assess when you talk to people their social support system. Are they having relationship stressors? Do they have coping strategies? And what kind of interventions for this kind of thing? Well, you want to encourage people to communicate. I want to promote any resources I can, either through me or through someone else. You want to always have a therapeutic communication relationship with. As I told you, the communication is not going away. So here's just a case study of a person. A 24-year-old college graduate recently moves to a new city. He reports to you he's a little lonely and disconnected. Probably doesn't know anyone, depending on where he came from. So I'll discuss with you guys a little bit. How does Erikson explain this? He explains it perfectly. If he doesn't know anyone, he can't really develop relationships with them. And we need that. We need that as human beings to succeed. So just in summary, successful resolution of intimacy versus isolation leads to meaningful relationships and some emotional health. Nurses can be supportive of young adults, assess their connections, and promote healthy coping.